Joining me now is California Congressman Tom McClintock. Always good to have you on the program, sir. So first, I got to ask you about these No Kings protests we saw yesterday throughout the state. What'd you make of them, and how did it go?
Well, you compare the protests with the parade in Washington. On the one hand, you had tens of thousands of patriotic Americans honoring our military, celebrating our country. And on the other, you had tens of thousands of leftists who were demanding open borders and throwing bottles and rocks at police officers. It's a very stark contrast, but I think it's also very informative.
I also want, while I have you, I want to ask you about what's going on in Minnesota. We've got this massive manhunt underway for a suspect who knocked on the door in the middle of the night of two lawmakers, Minnesota State Senator John Hoffman and then State Representative Melissa Hortman, who lost her life along with her husband, Mark. And now this manhunt is underway. So a lot of people are on edge, and this suspect allegedly had a manifesto that listed a lot of people that he wanted to get to, including lawmakers in Wisconsin. So the state of play here with what's going on with this manhunt and violence against lawmakers, I just got to get your take on this.
Well, first of all, it doesn't matter if the victim is left or right. Attacks like this are an attack on all of us as Americans. They're an attack on our democratic form of government. In a free society, we talk out our differences and we resolve them through periodic elections. The use of violence to intimidate people or affect the outcome of elections is absolutely poisonous to a free society. And I think we need to bear in mind there's a lunatic fringe on both sides of the political spectrum, and it has to be dealt with both through our law and through our culture.
You know, we just had up a flyer showing the suspect, if we could put it back up, because it's really important for us to stay focused, because he really could be anywhere. We do know that his second vehicle sounds like it was found. We don't know if he had an accomplice. We've heard a lot of different things, but let's take a look at this suspect. His name is Vance Bolter, and you see him in what looks like a DMV picture, another smiling headshot, and then this picture, Mr. McClintock, if you could take a look, he's wearing like a Halloween mask. That's how he approached the homes of Hoffman and Hortman in the middle of the night, dressed in a police uniform with body armor and a badge. It's just absolutely terrifying. And then this other picture of him with a cowboy hat on is something, it was a surveillance picture or video that was taken at a convenience store, I believe, the day of the attacks. So as we keep our eyes focused on this man, and police are looking for him now, many people believe he could be hopefully in the same area and they can nab him quickly, but he could be anywhere. And as you take a look, especially of that third picture of him going to the home of these two lawmakers in the middle of the night, who knows what he said, and maybe we'll learn through doorbell camera. But, you know, I just wonder what you make of looking for somebody like this. You said lunatic fringe on both sides, but this is somebody who definitely had a mission in his mind, and it's really, really terrifying. I'm just wondering what you and other lawmakers are doing to protect yourselves, and is this, you know, something that you look at on the regular, that something like this could happen?
Well, I mean, we're all aware of the threat, and we take the precautions that we can. But you know, this fellow is a monster. He will be caught. You remember a few months ago, we had the deliberate assassination of a health insurance CEO. That assassin was at large for several days, but eventually we caught him. And that was with him wearing a mask. This man, I think, is going to be easier to catch. And once caught, he needs to be prosecuted and the full force of the law brought down on his head.
Yeah, I was going to ask you as well. You know, you've been talking to other lawmakers, I'm sure. You've been talking to people in your state. You've got so much going on in the state of California. So, you know, you guys have your hands full, that's for sure. But in terms of safety, you mentioned precautions, and I guess you can't really tell us what those precautions are that you are taking. But have you seen political violence like this before? I mean, we've always heard of threats, but I just feel, and many of us feel, like things are so different right now.
Well, unless you go back in history, you know, Lincoln once gave a speech that he called on the perpetuation of our political institutions. And he spoke in that speech of the rising political violence, particularly the mob violence in his time. And he said it could be fatal to a country. And we need to combat it by teaching devotion to our institutions and not to tolerate lawlessness and mob violence. Well, that wheel's come full circle, and we just saw its latest effect in Minnesota. And I don't believe it's vigorous political speech that's responsible for this violence. It's rather a growing belief that began on the lunatic fringe, that we can no longer talk through our problems peacefully and resolve our differences. And those of us in government need to demonstrate that we can.
All right. Well, we will continue to check back in with you. You've got a lot going on with the protests and all of that. So we want to make sure to check back in and make sure everybody is doing all right. Congressman Tom McClintock, we want to thank you very much for joining us on your Sunday. Appreciate your time.